Wrestling fans, welcome back. I am so proud to be on the phone right now with one of the all-time greats and the king of sports professional wrestling. He is a WWE Hall of Famer. He is an award recipient of the Cauliflower Alley Club, WWE Tag Team Champion several times over. He's main evented WrestleManias. I could go on and on. Nothing more we can say than we are joined by the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, someone that will be joining us at Holiday Headlocks on November the 16th. Ted, how are you today?
I'm doing very good, Dan. How are you?
Oh, we're staying alive here. A lot of work to be done. As we don't want to spoil anything for the kids at home that watch, we're trying to ensure that Santa Claus's GPS has every good little boy and girl's address in it on Christmas Eve, so they get the toys that they earn throughout the year. It's going to be a special night as we head to Kowloon in just a few short weeks.
Well, I'm looking forward to being there very, very much. It's been a while since I've been in Boston, so it's always good to come back.
You know, I always feel like I am a quote-unquote Boston expert when it comes to wrestling. I vividly remember your re-debut in Boston back in 1987 as the $1 Million Man, but you had some stints in the Boston Garden way back in the early 80s with the WWF.
That's right. The first time that I went to the WWF, it was the WWF, and the man in charge was Vince McMahon Sr., and I was just a young guy, man. I was 79. I'd only been in the business for going on 5 years, and I came in there with another guy who actually stayed a little bit longer than me. Well, actually, he stayed in the East because he got married to a girl that he met there in New Jersey, and I'm talking about Tito Santana.
I think he turned into a piece of furniture for the WWF. I think he's still there. WWE doesn't realize it. Well,
he's and he's a very good friend of mine. And he still lives there, and he lives in New Jersey. But yeah, we came in there together, not as a tag team, but we came at the same time. And I was only there, I think, the first time about 9 months, and then I went back to work for Bill Watts in Mid-South.
And for those fans that may not be aware of it, there is a new tremendous 3-disc Mid-South DVD that our friends at WWE has put out. That's available on WWEshop.com right now, and fine retailers everywhere. Ted's face right on the cover of that. I'm sure that doesn't hurt the ego at all.
Well, I just hope that with my face on the cover, they still sell a bunch of them.
Well, when the quarterly residual checks come out, you'll know for sure on that.
That's right.
Fast forward a few years from your debut here in Boston to what was at the time, and still is, one of the most memorable wrestling matches of all time. We're talking about the main event on NBC from February of 1988, The Scandal, where Andre accidentally sold you one half of the tag team titles instead of the heavyweight. You came into Boston the next afternoon and had an event in Philadelphia that night where it was you and Andre against Hulk Hogan and Bam Bam Bigelow, where you came out with the championship belt.
Well, the whole thing, that was probably one of the greatest wrestling angles ever done. The whole premise of that event. The first thing about that night is that we're talking about, it was the first time that professional wrestling, had been back on national live network television since the 1950s. And it was Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan at Market Square Arena, correct?
Correct.
And this is the first time that Andre and Hogan had ever touched since their record-setting match at WrestleMania 3, 93,000 people at the Pontiac Silverdome. And but the story behind the story of the first rematch was that I had basically, in my arrogance, bought Andre's services and told the whole world that I'm going to prove there's nothing I can't buy, including the world title. And so, of course, we have the match, and the referee gets knocked down, and from the back comes Dave Hebner's identical twin, Earl, which nobody knew about, and counts Hogan down. Of course, Hulk's shoulders are 3 feet off the mat, and it was just, stealing the belt. And but that was really the setup for WrestleMania 4. And I wore the belt, as you said. I showed up at the Boston Garden wearing the heavyweight championship belt, and I showed up just about everywhere I went for the next 2 or 3 weeks until they made this announcement that Jack Tunney had declared that they couldn't allow me to keep the belt when I didn't actually physically win it, and Andre wouldn't take it back because I'd paid him off. So what do? Well, you have a tournament to declare a new champion, and that was WrestleMania 4.
It was an unbelievable event. Who will ever forget that great visual shot? I don't know if it was a Kevin Dunn idea, whoever the cameraman was, of having Hulk Hogan toss whichever Hebner it was out of the ring on top of you and Virgil and Andre the Giant. That's a shot that will live forever. And then you had the pageantry of Randy Savage hoisting Miss Elizabeth up on his shoulder at WrestleMania 4, which is a pretty subpar WrestleMania until you got to that main event championship match with you and Randy. Not only that, we talk about WrestleMania main events, but you were in one half of the double main event at WrestleMania 9 when you and Mike Rotundo, Irwin R. Shyster, defended against Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake.
That's correct. And, and WrestleMania 9 was not a particularly large WrestleMania in terms of what we see today. Now, back then when Vince was starting out, he didn't do the, he would do the super event at WrestleMania occasionally. It wasn't like now it's every year we're going to a major coliseum and filling it. Back then it was, matter of fact, WrestleMania 3 took place, sets an indoor world attendance record, and my next two WrestleManias, the first two that I'm a part of, are in Atlantic City, in a very small building. Of course, the biggest part of the revenue is not the live gate; it's the pay-per-view. And that was. Although I was excited about being there, obviously I was like, oh gosh, man, when am I going to get a chance to wrestle in front of one of these gigantic crowds? And of course, the next year, WrestleMania 6 was at the Sky Dome in Toronto, Canada, and I think we had like 86,000 people there.
Yeah, another tremendous visual from that WrestleMania 6 shot when they had the title for title match, and you wound up with your old nemesis, Jake Roberts.
I did, and Jake, I loved working with Jake. Jake was a tremendous in the ring, and he made my job easy because I didn't have to lead him around by his nose and tell him everything to do. And it's probably one of the best WrestleMania matches I ever had was with Jake.
Unbelievable. How does it feel present day? You've been off WWE television as a regular for a long, long time now, but to see such a young generation of fans be so familiar with you through the video games, through the action figures, through the WWE encyclopedia books that they put out. When I told my ex's 8-year-old son, little Devon Brent, that you were coming to our Holiday Headlocks event, he was all excited because it wasn't that he confused you with your son that's been on television, regularly for the past 6 or 7 years. He knew that it was $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, that he played through Xbox or whatever video game system he may have. And I know he had the action figures because I remember buying it for him. And how does it feel to have such young fans be so familiar with you?
It's amazing. Dan, I'm telling you, it's absolutely, I tell you, I didn't realize just how well the younger generation of wrestling fans knew me until a year ago. I went to Scotland. I've been there for the past 5 years. I went over there for an independent wrestling organization called SWE, Scottish Wrestling Entertainment, and I just became very good friends with the young man who started that organization, and so they've asked me back. Actually, this was the 5th year, and I told them this year, I said, look, I said, I appreciate you guys bringing me, I love Scotland, I love coming. I said, but enough is enough. They've had enough of the $1 Million Man. I said, you need to give me a break and bring somebody else next year. And they have brought, that's kind of opened the door for them. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I think Bret Hart is making an appearance for him this week. But anyway, I go to Scotland, and I'm going to be there like a week. And they walked me into their equivalent of like a Walmart, pick up a few things, and so as I'm walking in, This little boy, and Dan, I'm telling you, this kid couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. He's got his granny by the hand, and they're walking out as I'm walking in, and I hear him say to his grandmother, "Grandma, that's the $1 million man." I mean, my jaw dropped down. I spun around, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I said, "You know who I am?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "You're the $1 million man." I said, "How do you know who I am?" And he just smiled, and he said, "Video games."
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's well, and especially now that I'm, my hair is not highlighted. I'm like, 40 pounds heavier than I was. I wear glasses, and people recognize me.
I think it's
Incredible.
great. The first time that happened really with me was when I went to one of the kids' birthday parties, and they had one of the games on. I said, "Who do you like to play the best?" And they said, "We like to be Demolition." I said, "Demolition?" Because they were one of my favorites back in the 80s when I was in elementary school. So it just shows that, in reality, old school never dies. WWE, one of the greatest things they ever did was buying up all those old tapes so they can continue to pump those out with fresh content literally for decades to come.
Right, I agree. It's just amazing, and it's just been, you got to tip your hat to the organization. The marketing of it's just been incredible, and it's kept us alive. And I just happen to be one of those guys that, for whatever reason, that everybody seems to remember.
Unbelievable. Well, I don't want to try and spoil too much because at our event, not only do we have the autograph photo meet and greet, we have the dinner with the stars where the VIPs can even sit up close with the stars, but we're going to have the interactive question and answer session with the panel, which is always fun. One question I don't think folks are going to ask you, but I find awfully interesting, and there's actually a little backstory to it because you and I met at JFK Airport trying to get to Las Vegas for the Cauliflower Alley Club reunion. I was on hour 17, and I think you were coming from Nova Scotia. There's even a picture that exists of it somewhere in my albums. But what was the difference between receiving the WWE Hall of Fame award and a Cauliflower Alley Club award, in your opinion?
Well, it's again, people ask me about being inducted in the Hall of Fame, and it's special. It's special because you're being singled out and you're being recognized by your peers. Now, both the WWE Hall of Fame and there's just the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, which is another, the Hall of Fame that's up in Amsterdam, New York, that I'm also in. And again, both of those were special simply because I guess the WWE, because of the stature of the business today and how far-reaching that is, and that's more of like my immediate peers. But the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, just Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, Amsterdam, New York, it's like a lot of the older guys, guys that were like my dad's era, and even just before my dad's era, guys whose names I remember. Some of them I never even really knew, but a lot of them that I did know and meet as a very young boy. That made that special, and the same is true with the Cauliflower Alley Club because, I had been to maybe one Cauliflower Alley Club gathering, and I just happened to be there at the same time it was going on, and then I got an invitation. Art Cruz, who is not a really, really well-known name, but a guy who wrestled and spent a lot of time in the Kansas City area, had become a friend of mine, and they were honoring him in one of their categories at their banquet, and he asked that I would go and present him. And so I went out there, and this has probably been 5 years ago, and I just loved it. I mean, I got to be around some guys that I hadn't seen in a lot of years, and again, a lot more of the guys that were part of the era of wrestlers who helped me learn the trade, and some of those guys I realized, and I've been every year. This past year I didn't get to go, but I had bilateral knee replacement, and I'd just done WrestleMania, so I needed to give my legs a break. But
Right.
um, I've been back there every year since, except this past year, and I'll go again this coming year because just the camaraderie of being around a group of guys like that, and there's nostalgia of it, the award, and they gave me their premier award the year that I was there.
Correct.
They called the Iron Mike Award, which ironically was the wrestling name of my dad. Now, it wasn't named after my dad. I think it was after Iron Mike Mazurki.
Correct.
But just the fact that the name of this presentation,
The Iron Mike Award, right?
Award,
Yep.
just unbelievable. But yeah, it was very special. They're all special in their own way. But that one there's a little more, sentimentality to that one than to the others.
We actually have that on videotape from when we were out in Vegas. Maybe we'll put that up online as we get a little bit closer to Holiday Headlocks. Maybe you've never had a chance to even see it on tape. But I remember the night before the award ceremony, how excited you were to see Killer Carl Cox. So if I remember the story correct that you told over the microphone with Carl Lauer, you hadn't seen him in a long, long time. That's what makes these reunions so special, just to even observe, never mind take part in.
And you're right, and he's one of those people I think of because the first I knew Carl Cox from the time I was like in the 5th grade, and he and my dad were wrestling in the Amarillo territory at the same time, and I can still remember I would go out on hikes with him and his son, and then years later, at the very beginning of my career. And he's at the very end of his. The first wrestling angle I ever shot as a young man was with Killer Carl Cox. And you talk about a consummate pro. There's a guy that deserved to be in the Hall of Fame because he's one of those guys who get the most out of the least, and just probably one of the biggest feuds that I ever witnessed was when I first started in the business, and it was on the my little thing with Carl Cox was on the tail end or right in the middle of this big feud between Dick Murdoch and Carl Cox in Mid-South Wrestling, and it was just unbelievable, And I don't know if they have any of that footage on the DVDs, but if they don't, they should.
Someone's going to have it out there somewhere if WWE doesn't have it in the archives yet. It would be great to see, and it's going to be great to see you, Ted. I don't want to ask too many questions because, again, that's part of the event itself. It's MWF Holiday Headlocks. It started last year. It's just a small event right here in this studio with the dear friend of ours, the late Paul Bear, and WWE Hall of Famer Ron Simmons. We were able to do a world of good to make sure that the local kids in the Boston area had a nice Christmas, and I don't think there's any sadder thought in my mind when listening to Christmas carols that a kid that comes from a tough period in his life, not having that wow experience when they wake up.
Well, and I agree, and I couldn't think of a better cause. I have a heart for kids. As a minister of the gospel, one of the things that my ministry contributes to is underprivileged and disadvantaged kids. There's a little country church about 40 miles out there that my mother and father-in-law attend, and they have like a food pantry. And again, that's something else that my ministry gives to on a regular basis. And a lot of that is poorer families, often with several children that just for one reason or another just don't get enough. And so and my hat off to you, Dan, for your effort in this. And yeah, it's a great cause, and I'm proud that I'm going to be able to be a part of it with you.
Well, it's going to be a great night, Ted. We hope it's going to be a special night. Our friend Sue down in WWE, one of the true angels of the King of Sports Professional Wrestling. She's always a great help in endeavors like this that we have. But not only are we going to be able to see, meet, greet, and even eat with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, we have, going back to look at the 90s era, the Monday Night Wars, if you want to call them that. The lovely Deborah will be with us. The Godfather will be doing double duty as also Papa Shango. John Cena Sr. has a real treat in mind for the fans because not only is he going to be there live and in person, but he's bringing the authentic WWE U.S. Spinner Championship belt that his son won. Once you become a champion, you almost get one as a trophy, and he gave that to his dad. Fans will be able to have their photo taken not with a replica, but with the real deal that John wore on TV. It doesn't get much cooler than that. We have more announcements of more stars that are going to be with us. And again, it is all for a great cause. We're going to kick it off with autographs and photos. Anyone that's ever been to Kowloon will tell you how delicious the Chinese food is. We're going to have a full buffet dinner for everyone. We're going to have the charity auctions and raffles throughout the night. And then what I would call the main event is the interactive Q&A, where the fans get to play the host and they get to ask the superstars questions. It's going to be a great night. And again, we just want to try and create smiles, which we always do with our live events. But with Christmas coming up, or the holiday season, if you want to be politically correct, it's a time that we really like to pay extra special attention to. I remember the year I first became physically disabled, and Christmas was going to be a little bit of a challenge with my ex's children, but we pulled it off in the end. I kicked out before we hit 3 on December 25th, and we're going to make sure that a lot of other families have that same experience. Ted, before we go, after this great interview, any final thoughts?
I tell you, I look forward always to an opportunity to meet and greet fans and, to get one-on-one with them. I actually love doing the Q&As to field their questions and try to, answer the questions that they have, about wrestling and about our careers. But again, this will be special because Boston is one of those places that I really enjoyed going to, and since since leaving my active career, it's a place that I've been able to go back to New York several times, but I haven't been back to the Boston area, but just a couple of times, and so I'm really looking forward to this and looking forward to seeing the fans, and again, to do it for such a great cause just is like a cherry on top of the sundae. So I'm looking forward to it very much, and I would just say to all the fans out there one more time, remember, everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
I can't add much more to that, fans. Tickets at all levels are available online now at bostonwrestling.com. Join the superstars and legends of yesterday, today, and tomorrow while helping a great holiday cause at the same time. It's Holiday Headlocks 2013.